And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm James, and I'm joined tonight with Stephajn, my brother from another mother, chosen brother, that is. And we're going to be talking tonight about his experience of going to film school and what his life's looking like afterwards. So, Stephajn, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, tell me first of all, let's start off like what got you interested in wanting to go to film school to begin with?
Oh, well, okay. So back in high school, when I was going into grade 10, I was attending a school, the Victoria School for the Arts here in my hometown. And it was a school that's known for like all of its art programs, like dance, music, drama. It had like a full blown theater and whatnot, but it also had a television arts program that um, was really, really cool because it had a full television studio inside the school that was like, it used to be a garage and now they converted it into a studio with like a full lighting grid. We had the actual kinds of like studio cameras that like news stations would use, portable like on-site cameras, like all of the industry standard equipment that your local news station would also be using, and the same video editing suites. And this really fascinated me. I mean, I've always been a movie buff. And so in high school, in all three of my years there, I took the television arts program and learned about studio shooting and then on location shooting, the art of shooting the conversation. Um, yeah, like it was a lot of fun. But after high school, when I wanted to go into radio and television, um, I didn't quite have the marks that I needed to get into the course that I wanted to. So I fell back on programming, but the love of movies and television and like the desire to make stuff never left. And of course, this is in the late 90s before YouTube existed or like any of the modern platforms existed where anybody with a camera and an internet connection could really create content. Well, in 2019, um, I partook in my first ex Jehovah's Witness protest at a convention and shot some video and decided to create a YouTube channel and start just experimenting with seeing what kinds of content I could create. I bought a video editor program called Filmora and some really cheap, inexpensive equipment and just started making content and getting myself reacquainted with the editing process, but now in a digital form rather than with VHS cassettes. And after about a year or so of figuring out different editing techniques and how like a digital video editor works, I thought, well, I've made some interesting stuff, mostly like kind of just sitting talking head kind of content. And I started to experiment with things like green screen removal or seeing if I could do something that's quote unquote more cinematic. But I knew that I needed help with kind of getting a little bit more, shall we say, industry training to fully understand like the filmmaking process, like and how the pros do it and how to make something that is cinematic and kind of raising the production quality, if you will. So in the fall of 2020, yeah, the fall of 2020, with the COVID pandemic basically like locking everyone in their house and all of the rest of that, I decided, well, if that's how it's going to be, then I might as well like spend my time indoors learning something. And so I applied at the Toronto Film School, and which is like a very industry leading kind of film school for like video production, film production, writing, acting, visual effects design, and whatnot. I decided to get my video production diploma online over the course of 2 years. And yeah, I signed up and they accepted me for some reason.
That's awesome, though. So I'm gonna do kind of a little journey here. I'm gonna show your first video from your introduction.
Oh boy.
So
Oh no.
let's have a little fun and
Oh.
watch this first video.
This interview is over.
Oh, it's only just beginning.
Mhm.
So is your torment.
Oh, this video. Oh, this
Yes, this
video.
video. Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
This was now for our viewers, this was the first video that I actually helped you with a little bit, and a bunch of other people helped you with a little bit as an introduction to who you are.
Yeah, this was the first assignment that they had us do in film school, which was to shoot a quick 1 or 2 minute 1 or 2 minute video. How long is this one?
3 minutes and 39 seconds.
3 minutes, yeah. And just to kind of like introduce yourself, and then what they wanted us to do is like, do some sort of lighting and everything else. So just so everybody knows, this is not the YouTube channel that I created in 2019. This one was created as part of film school to showcase all of the work that I did while in class.
Yes, and what work you have done.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and check this video out.
Hello, my name is Stephajn, and I'm making this video to tell you a little bit about
don't-
myself and where
Can
I
you
come
hear
from.
it?
Mhm.
I am enrolled in the Toronto Film School as an online student, and I have
You hear
for years
Yep.
had an
Oh,
interest in
because I don't.
television, radio, movies, etc. When I was in high school, I took a television arts course in all 3 years of school and thoroughly enjoyed it. We got to learn about studio production, field production, and those wonderful techniques with regards to shooting news broadcasts and even with short videos, films as well, even thematic things like a comical chase scene, which was a lot of fun to make. We had full editing suites, and it was the same gear that was used in
There we
the
go.
industry by professionals.
Check out that
This was,
wild
of
beard.
course, back in the days
I know,
before
right?
digital.
Yeah.
So everything was on VHS.
I had to change the setting. Now I hear it.
But now things are different. It's all about video. But my love of movies and
Hey, Jay.
that particular medium has not died, as you can see. Wide variety of movies. But honestly, like, I'm especially focused on like the arts and some of the higher things in life. I really enjoy that a lot. I mean, ask any one of my friends. They'll tell you what I like.
Stephajn, he really likes Star Trek.
Yeah, he likes Star Trek.
He likes Star Trek.
Nope.
He likes Star Trek, of course.
He likes Star Trek.
He likes Star Trek.
Like, a lot.
I mean, what kind of question is that anyway?
Oh, Stephajn, man, he loves Star Trek.
He likes Star Trek.
Star Trek. Yeah.
He likes Star Trek.
He likes Star Trek.
Stephajn likes Star Trek.
I don't know what they're talking about.
I told him one time Star Wars was better, and he just went crazy. He was all screaming, glory for the Empire, or something like that.
Glory for the Empire.
This, letter opener.
He tags me like at least once a day in a Star Trek post.
He was actually speaking Klingon, so I'm just guessing that's what he said.
As soon as I see it there, Stefan's tagged you in a post, I know it's going to be a Star Trek one.
That happened one time, and you're just branded for life. Oh,
Maybe to the point of obsession.
It's kind of obsessed.
I mean, he named the dog Q.
yeah, letter opener. It's very fancy and effective. Yeah.
Great guy, though.
Is there any other answer here besides Star Trek?
Star Wars.
As I
have
look
a very
over to my
active
right
sense of
and I have a
humor, and
lightsaber.
I really love to pour that into anything that I make. But it is my hope that with the education I get, that I can make even better videos, better content, tell some meaningful stories, and who knows, maybe there will be a film made one day.
I am a bigger Star Trek fan than he is. I don't care if he has more toys, more collectibles, knows the movies, knows the TV series better than I do. None of that matters. There's only one thing that matters. He has never been to.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Now that's the real glory to the empire.
Now, something that's kind of interesting about that video. So, when I was getting ready for film school, and they were trying to tell us, like, what kind of equipment that they suggested we have, they said, you can use a phone, like an iPhone or whatever. They said you would kind of suggest that you get a DSLR camera that's capable of shooting in HD, possibly even 4K. And this, of course, was before I kind of understood the difference between something cheap and something more expensive, and why the more expensive thing is more expensive. So I went out and I bought a Canon M50 camera, which shoots video in HD and can do 4K, but you lose things like autofocus and all of the rest of that kind of stuff. So if you're a one-person shooting crew, autofocus is your best friend. And yeah, I shot that video using the Canon M50, and I shot like a couple of other assignments after that using the M50. But then I found very quickly, it's like, oh, I've outgrown this thing. Like, I need more camera. I want the 4K, not just HD, but I need to keep autofocus, and I need to do other things with it. And the M50 was like, ugh, good beginner camera, but not a filmmaker camera, like not a filmmaker camera. And I went through, what is it? I bought a Sony A7C camera and lenses. And then I bought the camera that I'm using now as a webcam, a Sony A6400. And then like lights and microphones and green screens and equipment. My closet behind me is like just loaded with all that stuff. And then, of course, the ultimate camera for me, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro, like a cinema camera.
Pocket, like it still doesn't look like it can fit in your pocket, though.
Yeah, I don't know why.
So the advertisement's a little bit false on that.
Yeah, just the body alone, you would have to have pockets like Ronald McDonald or something. I think I don't know, but
pockets like Donald Trump.
There you go. Yeah, bag of holding as a pocket, I guess. But yeah, so like just throughout, like the equipment just kept getting upgraded and upgraded and upgraded.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Stephajn's kind of been my equipment advisor throughout my YouTube journey, and given me help on editing and what programs to use. And you started me off with Filmora as well.
Yeah.
And then you told me later on about DaVinci Resolve, which I don't know if you knew about that back then or not.
Only by name. But I was also kind of concerned about getting something that was just far too advanced for like what I knew about digital video editing. I mean, let's say 15 years ago, I remember playing around with Windows Movie Maker, which was like, the ultimate basic video editor. Usually kind of sucked at it, really. Didn't really make too much out of it. And then like with Filmora, I was just trying to figure things out and see like, how do you piece something together digitally? But kind of like with the Canon M50 camera, I found that I was like starting to outgrow what Filmora could do for me. And like its green screen removal kind of sucked at everything. And the audio control capabilities of it were like pretty basic and whatnot. And I heard about DaVinci Resolve, which has a free version, and decided, okay, well, if you're really gonna do something cinematic, you're gonna need something more powerful. So just get started and try it, really. And some videos that I made on my first YouTube channel from like say in the fall of 2020, like summer to fall of 2020, were entirely edited using the free version of DaVinci Resolve.
Well, you know what though? That free version is freaking fantastic even for a guy like, especially for a guy like me, you know, because I've never been to film school. I'm just like an at home, learn it on the fly kind of editor. And that program saved my ass when it came to the video I did with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
When I did their interview, I went to their house and I had just gotten all new lights and my first green screen and all that, right? And I set it all up. And I remember calling you, you know, for advice on how to set it up and everything while I was there. And then I get home, and at that time, I still only had Filmora. And like you said, the green screen removal was just terrible.
Yep.
And then you introduced me to DaVinci. Now, I'm already learning one program. You know, this isn't my field. I'm not, you know, in it or anything. And then you tell me about DaVinci. And so I got like this whole new program to learn. And when you look at the differences between the two programs, Filmora was like more for basic film video editing, you know. And when I opened up DaVinci, I was like, oh my God, there's all this stuff to go through. And, you know, you got your timeline, you got your edit, you got the tab for music, for audio, for color correction. There's so much you can do with just the free version.
Yep.
But I went on, I'm like, okay, I've got to learn this because I got to get that green screen out of there. I did not want to just put up a video with us sitting in front of a green screen and not seeing anything else besides that. So I went in, I learned how to key it and get it all in and everything and get it removed and put up what I wanted on it. Post production, post filming, that was a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I watch it to this day, like I know I can see where I have some errors in it with the keying of it in and everything, especially because my mom wore a green sweater, so that's harder, you know. And so, but what a program though, because it literally saved my ass from having to just have a video with us sitting in front of a green screen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for the people who are more advanced in it, it's a phenomenal program.
Yeah, and
Absolutely
like
phenomenal.
What I love about it, especially, like, not to gush too much about Resolve and make it sound like this is some shill product plug, but what I loved about the free version of Resolve is that it doesn't have technical limitations like, oh, well, you know, your video can only be like 10 minutes long, or you're going to have like a watermark or something like that appear in it unless you buy the full version. Like, and you can do like a lot of really amazing things with the free version. The paid version, about the only differences really are that the paid version tends to have a bit more AI capabilities built into it for things like selecting objects within a frame. Like if I was editing this video and I wanted to select my body out of my part of the video and put it somewhere else, it has features like to kind of like make that easier and use AI to like follow me as I move around and be like, yep, I got them. I can move them out. Or like audio cleanup, or when you're doing like compositing stuff like digital, like video visual effects on the Fusion page, the paid version has like maybe just a few more nodes in it that are for things like 3D camera tracking and whatnot, which is like, if you're using that feature, chances are you can get the paid version, and the paid version is only a one-time purchase of like $300 American, and that's it. Not like this Adobe crap where you're paying for it, you know, perpetually for really buggy, crappy software that's poorly supported. So, yeah.
And even then, like, but even with the free and the paid version, you get updates constantly. So, like, you're always getting something new, whether you paid for it or not. You like, and like you said, you don't have a watermark. You don't have limits on how long your videos can be. And I know it sounds like just a major product plug right now, but really for anybody out there who is interested in learning how to edit videos or whatever, definitely go with DaVinci Resolve, because it is just a fantastic program and you can use it for free as long as you want.
Yeah. And if you're paying for a Creative Cloud subscription where, let's say you have Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects, and maybe Adobe Audition, like, so your video editor, your visual effects, and your audio editing, well, by that point in time, for what you're paying per month for those 3 programs, multiplied by about another 3 or 4 months, you could own a copy of DaVinci Resolve Studio and never have to buy another license again, unless, of course, you need to have it installed on more than 2 devices. So that's my soapbox. That's my plug for Blackmagic Design.
Right. And don't you have one of their controllers too?
I do. So I bought their speed editor, which is really nice. And when you buy this, you get DaVinci Resolve Studio for free.
Oh, really?
Like you buy this, they give you the studio version of Resolve for free.
Oh, wow.
Buy one of their cameras, you also get the studio version of Resolve for free.
So how many versions of it for free do you have by now?
I have 2 licenses because I've purchased 2 of their pieces of hardware that include it. So yeah.
My buddy here is asking, do you use the YouTube app? I'm dumb when it comes to the YouTube thing.
The YouTube app. Oh, like the in-browser stuff?
I've never used it.
I had to use it once. There was a video that I created, again, like before film school, on my XJW Silent No More channel. I used, it was for one clip, I put AC/DC's Highway to Hell over top of it. And I guess like they really, really hated that. And then they just blocked the thing altogether. So rather than having to pull down the video and upload a new one, YouTube's video editing said, like, look, you can mute this out, replace it with other music, or just cut the clip altogether. And it was in the browser, and it was very rudimentary, but it did the trick. The really cool part about, again, gushing about Resolve, is when you go to deliver your content, like on the deliver page, you can have it render up and just straight up upload straight to YouTube. Yeah. Like optimized for streaming on YouTube from within the program. So,
and now even with the free version, you can have it split up into chapters automatically too by your markers onto YouTube. So that makes making chapters so much easier than anything else. But I wanted to move on a little bit here. So I showed everybody your first video that you did, and how far along were you by the time you made the you were asked to do a project to make a trailer, and you chose to do a trailer for the TV show Breaking Bad?
That was actually the assignment. They gave us 14 minutes of clips from Breaking Bad, and they said, edit together a trailer, choose like a deliberate style, like don't just, mash things together, choose a style of editing. And after you've done your edit, write up a short paragraph sort of justifying your editing choices and why you did it that way. So
why did you edit it the way you did?
Oh, well, see, well, I don't know. Do you want to roll the clip first, or do you want to?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and roll the clip, because this was actually the reason why I started watching this show.
This trailer.
This trailer.
Oh my God.
Yes. Your trailer made me watch the show for the first time.
Damn.
I had never seen it before. So yeah, you didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and watch this trailer.
Chemistry is the study of matter, but I prefer to see it as the study of change. You clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. Do you know how much I make a year? I mean, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Do you know what would happen if I suddenly decided to stop going into work? A business big enough that it could be listed on the NASDAQ goes belly up.
We got in there, cinder blocks.
$500,000 in cash. I am not in danger, Skylar.
I am the danger.
Oh.
Run.
So,
Nice.
so that video. So okay. Full disclosure, I still have yet to watch the entire series. I've only seen the first season and I think the first episode of season 2. And even then, that was back in 2014, and I kind of got distracted with all kinds of everything else that's available to watch on Netflix. And I haven't gotten back to it yet.
Jesus God, man.
I know. Just I'm sorry, folks. It was good talking to you.
And you know, all those clips were from all 5 seasons of the show.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I recognize where I could almost pretty much tell you where every clip was in every season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you haven't even seen after season 1.
I saw the first episode of season 2. So anyway, this
okay. So as a reminder, I'm gonna have to, because of that, I'm gonna have to remind you of Star Trek Experience. I gotta just rub that. No,
too soon.
Too soon. It was too soon 3-4 years ago. Come on now.
Yeah, it's still too soon. So like one of the biggest things that they talk about in film school, when you think about any piece of content, no matter how short it is, even for a trailer, films are always told in like a 3-act structure, right? Act 1 always introduces like the world in which the movie or whatever takes place in, allows you to know who the key players are, who's your hero, who's your villain, and Act 1 ends with some sort of inciting incident, like your first plot point that kicks us off into Act 2, which is colloquially called the fun and games act. That's where shit happens, right? Things get real, and the hero or anti-hero, as Walter White could be considered to be, goes through stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And the problem that's raised at the end of Act 1 that kind of kicks off the fun and games, when that problem or question is answered, that's where Act 2 comes to an end. And Act 3 is basically like, okay, so we've answered the problem. Now we have like the climax of the film, the denouement, like, you know, wrapping things up. So
like the resolving of the problem, or the, you know, taking care of the character's final arc and things like that.
Yeah, like the resolution to the problem that was raised. So a good example, like you can, like, once you're familiar with this, like you can look at any of your favorite films and think about, like, you can recognize when it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like let's do Star Trek for a moment, right? So Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the inciting problem, if you will, is when Khan meets up with Kirk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And well, it might even be a little bit earlier than that. Like maybe when they find out that Khan is alive and he wants revenge, right? So there you go. Now we're off to the races. So Act 2, bringing up all of those things, like, you know, the confrontation between the Enterprise and the Reliant, the space station, the Genesis planet. Well, not the planet, but the Genesis cave inside the asteroid and so on. But the problem that's raised is like, well, how is Kirk going to overcome Khan? Like, will Khan get the better of him or not? And that question is answered at the end of Act 2 when you see the Reliant blow up, right? The Enterprise wins, Kirk survives, right? Act 2 is over. But what happens in Act 3? Well, the problem of Khan was resolved, but Spock had to die in order for that to happen. So we have Kirk's emotional farewell with Spock, Spock's funeral, and then of course them leaving his body behind on the Genesis planet. Like that's Act 3, right? So in this movie, or in this series trailer, they said like, yeah, like in your trailer, you need to keep in mind the 3-act structure. So the first part of your trailer needs to introduce the person, and kind of a brief view of like the world that we're in. So the first part of my trailer kind of shows like, okay, so Walter White is, he's obviously like a family man because you see him there in like his peaceful suburban home. He's a chemistry teacher because you see him changing or teaching chemistry. But then it very quickly, like, boom, like he's making something explosive and now people are firing at him, right? And so then in Act 2 of the trailer, we kind of introduce like, okay, so what has he become? Like he's getting worse and worse as time goes on. Even to the point where like you see him and Skylar there with the massive amount of money in the storage container. But as the trailer progresses, if you're looking really closely, the first part of the trailer is actually just natural colors, like straight from the film. As he's talking with Skylar and says like, you clearly have no idea who you're dealing with. What I did there was I wanted to kind of give the viewer a very subtle kind of feeling of like things are getting real and things are getting heated up. So what I did was I used the color grading tech in Resolve to kind of put like a very subtle warming of all of the colors. Like, you know, things are getting heated up and a little bit warmer as it goes on. So that then by the time you see in Act 3, where you have like the wall that explodes out, right? And even like the Winnebago like ripping around a corner in the desert and so on. The gun, him like punching the towel dispenser in the bathroom. If you look closely, you can kind of see like it has a little bit more of a red tinge. Like he's seeing red. He's become a much more violent, angry kind of person as he goes on. And so the trailer was kind of meant to show this sort of devolving of this family man who's a chemistry teacher into, you know, he can just wave his fingers and, oh, 2 targets on these people, right?
Right.
Like Dave says, like, yeah, it's about the emotional response. And color grading in films can elicit that response. Like, you know, when they want you to feel that things are cold and dreary, you see a lot of blue. When they want you to feel like warm and safe or whatever, you know, they tend to use like warmer like tones and whatnot. Probably one of the worst kinds of things that is often done in films, and I talked about this in film school with a couple of my instructors, is you think of like any film that's made in Hollywood. In the US, the coloring is very natural, right? But then if they go to Russia, they always, without fail, make everything look blue and cold.
Yeah, it's always in like these gray tones and
exactly. Yeah, it's always blue and cold and desolate there, like as if like that's all that Russia is. And then anytime you go to somewhere like India, they have this ridiculous amount of yellow in the thing to make it look like as if that's the color that India is. And one of my teachers, who was originally from India, I asked him about that, and he says, yeah, like in a way, it's kind of racist. I'm like, yeah, it's absolutely stupid. And it's not like, why? Like, why do that? He says, it's this weird, subtle kind of racism that is in Hollywood that, you know, they always present these other countries in that way, but America is always like the natural color kind of thing. So I decided in this trailer to use color more so to indicate like the emotional experience of our main character Walter, and like the level of violence getting more and more intense, and then like the edits even getting faster and faster, and like the explosions are getting bigger towards the end because it's coming to like, sort of like the climax of the trailer itself, until the audio just drops out, and then you just bang, like, you know, a shotgun where you see Jesse kind of like jump, like that's supposed to be you as the viewer too, like holy moly, that was like whoa, right? And then just run. Like, this guy, is he like, the trailer is meant to give an unanswered question, like, is he telling Jesse to run because he's going to shoot him next, or for some other reason? Well, you're gonna have to watch Breaking Bad and find out.
And I did just that because
and you did just that.
Now, I will say I did get to see, I remember when you showed me your original edit of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would send me your stuff and I would, you know, kind of look through it. And I remember in this trailer that you had like this rippling effect going through with the screen near the end where it showed the building and you had the letters come in, you know, for the words on screen.
Yeah.
And I remember telling you, like, okay, 'cause I know I'm no editor, but like that just seemed so out of place in this trailer for what you did. And I remember telling you that, and you took it out, and I felt good because like I know I'm no pro and I'm not going to school, but like I saw something in it that just made it took away from the rest of the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And like with you doing that, you helped me see these things. You helped me recognize different things like that to look for, just to like, does that edit fit? Now I didn't catch all the color grading stuff that you just described and all that originally, but like for sounds and things that just fit in with it in general, like I was able to see that a little bit better because I was watching it with the eye of scrutiny to see if there's anything that might have stood out. And I remember that one thing's just standing out to me, just like, you know, blaring at me, you know, like this just does not fit for this trailer, because that's nowhere else in the trailer other than that one spot you had it in.
Yeah, there's a common problem that inexperienced, like, you know, like rookie editors and everything can fall into, and that's where, and they even told us about this in film school. Like, it doesn't matter which program you use, like whether it was like Filmora, that thing that Adobe makes, or Resolve even, there's all kinds of transitions that are available, like, you know, the weird kind of thing, like at Wayne's World and whatnot. But they say, like, you know, like if you look at most films, there's only one of two kinds of cuts or transitions that are done. It's either a straight cut or it's a cross dissolve. Sometimes like a dip to black and then back up again kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like the Wayne's World and whatnot, like that's just not done in like professional film. Even like you think about Star Wars, like from one scene to another, they always have like the wipe kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of something that you expect from a Star Wars movie because it was done right back in with the very first one ever made. So they kept it going through all 10 films, I guess, right? Because for Star Wars, that makes sense. But for something that's brand new, like you just don't do things like that. Like even the burn away thing that I did where Walter like tosses a match, even that might have been a little bit of overkill, but I was like, well, it's a little bit stylized in a way, like kind of like leading the viewer to think that the trailer is over, and you know it goes all quiet right before bang, right? So
right.
I mean, we even learned about things like in film, like you have your lean in moments where if you edit things in a certain way, the audience member, whether they realize it or not, they kind of lean in like, what's going to happen? what's going to happen. And I did that in the trailer, for example, where it's like, what you got in there? Cinder blocks? And you notice how the music cuts out. You just let the scene breathe, and Walter goes, what is it, 600 million in cash, or 6 million in cash?
Yeah, half a million in cash.
$500,000 in cash, yeah. And then the music comes back. I'm like, get in. Like, yeah, like editing techniques like that were things that we learned in editing class as to ways in which we can work with it. So what I was also especially inspired by was I wanted to kind of show Breaking Bad in such a way that it would almost feel like a 90s action hero movie, like Die Hard or Under Siege or whatever. And thus, like, the font choice and the whooshing text.
And I was gonna say that because that font choice you used felt like a 90s TV show series. And I always wondered why you did that. Because I'm like, that is just like so like, because the show was 2000s and that's like 90s. I'm like, what the hell were you thinking?
Yep. But that was the idea. Like, I wanted a 90s action movie sort of feel. And like even using a song like the Bone Cracker from the 90s. That was my wife's suggestion. I was really struggling to find music, and she's like, have you ever heard of Bone Cracker? And I took one listen to the song. I'm like, oh. But I remember my instructor giving
that song
me
for that.
Yeah. My instructors, like, whenever they would give feedback, like when they would grade your assignments, they would record a video. They'd have themselves like kind of like down in the bottom corner, and then they'd be scrubbing through your video and showing you things that they liked or could be improved and everything else. My instructor, when he started off the video for the feedback on that, bravo, sir. Yeah, he enjoyed it, you know. And even just certain things like, you know, with the exploding building at the end, I kind of exaggerated the bass frequencies in the audio to kind of make the building explosion feel deeper. So if you had like a good subwoofer, it would like try and rumble your subwoofer a little bit. Yeah, just stuff like that.
It's sad. I used to have a really good subwoofer.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Kilamax was the name of the brand. The company was Eminence. It was an 18-inch woofer with a 4-inch aluminum heat sink in the middle. It was 1,000-watt RMS and 4,000 peak, and I had the amp to power it too. That thing would shake your balls off, dude.
I was gonna say, did it shake the underwear off for everybody? Yeah.
Because when I was a teenager, the thing I was into home theater. So you're like a very, very much a compliment to my geeky side here, because I always loved the surround sound, and I always loved having to try to have the best, you know, I could for what I could afford, of course. And I even had friends who were in pro audio, and that's subwoofer I had was from a pro audio friend that I incorporated into my home theater. So I had to actually have an adapter cable because it had it was called a speak-on, the connector for the amplifier. And then you had to have an adapter for that to go into a RCA jack for the subwoofer out of your receiver, and to go into the pro amp. And then, you know, of course, powers the subwoofer. And that thing just sounded phenomenal. Like, I always had the big tower speakers, the big center channel speaker, and then I had the speakers, you know, for the surround sound. And dude, I would never want to go to a movie. I would always want to watch a movie at home because my sound was always so much better than a movie theater. Always.
Yep.
And you could pause it too.
that's always good too. Yeah. You could pause it and go get snacks.
Yeah. Use the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, let's move on your journey of film school. So I want to ask you, was there any like particular specialty in film school, or is it like a general type of course for what you did?
So the course that I took, it was the whole spectrum of filmmaking. So we got to touch on everything, like from the first term. It was like, here's the fundamentals of how stories are told. Right. There's a lot of reading in that course, like learning about like the origins of myth and how stories come from myths. And they even talked about the Bible in some ways, and like, stories that are in it and how they're common to like other cultures and whatnot. And then, this is a camera, this is a shutter, this is the aperture, this is what focusing is. And then as it went on, they taught us about like video editing, and then there was like audio mixing, like the fundamentals of audio, and like what really what using a graphic equalizer does in like audio editing, and why they are there, the different kinds of microphones, and what they're useful for. They taught us like how to use Pro Tools, which is like the industry standard audio editor for all Hollywood films. Like, yeah, it's a beast. And then they also taught us a little bit about compositing and visual effects, like motion graphics, like text, and even some of the things like, when you pop up a comment on screen, like lower thirds, like stuff like that, using Adobe After Effects. And that was basically like the first year in a nutshell. It was like, here's all these like technical things, the building blocks of like just the raw stuff of doing a film, right? In year 2, it was all about like, okay, so now that you kind of understand, hopefully how to run a camera, how to record audio, mix it in with your like editing skills and so on. Also in the first year, they taught us actually how to write a properly industry standard formatted script. And also a bit about how to create like short form digital web series, which we had in that course. So they gave us the assignment of like, okay, so we want you to come up with a concept for a short form web series that you might play on like YouTube or like CBC Gems or some of these other short web series streaming platforms. Write a series Bible for it. Who are the characters? Like, develop the show basically. And by the end of that course, it was, you had a series Bible, you had a pitch document, and you also had the pilot for your first, like you had the pilot script for your first episode, and also a rough idea of like, okay, here's sort of how the series would play out. Here's how long it could go on for. And then in year 2, it was like, okay, so now that you've like learned how to operate a camera and everything else, now we're going to teach you how to be a director. We're going to show you like how to do like scene blocking, how to direct actors, how to audition people, things like that, how to be a producer and what the producer's job is, how to use software like say Celtics or Studio Binder to create industry standard documents for like your budget, your filming budget, call sheets, shooting schedule, things of that nature. The fundamentals of how to create like what we call reality television, but they call it unscripted television. They gave us the assignment actually as well to come up with an original concept for a reality TV show. There was also documentary studies, right? How are documentaries made? What are the different kinds of documentaries? And we had to make one. And then a little bit about like kind of like building your brand as a filmmaker, like online, building an online presence and that. And then also a little bit about branded content, which some people might think commercials, but more so like trying to think of an example. I mean, up here in Canada, we have an airline called WestJet, and they like to do a sort of a promotional video at April Fool's time to show like, our new service where you can check your babies as checked luggage or something like that and have a quiet flight. That's actually a really bad example because they didn't do it, but it's not so much about selling. It's not so much about selling tickets as just like, this is showing our personality. hell, like 10, 15 years ago or more, Reebok had this thing. It was like Terry Tate office linebacker, and there was a whole series of short videos that they had about this football player who was working in an office, and basically he was the enforcer to make sure people weren't say draining the coffee out of the coffee pot without, you know, making some more. He would give them like a nasty tackle and everything. The only time you even knew that it was a Reebok piece of content was at the very end. It'd be like Reebok.com/Terry Tate, right? But yeah, so like they taught us a bit about that, and then there was finally like our final project film, which was, you've now gotten everything that you need to create a film. And in fact, in term 2, we even had you write a script for a short film. Maybe you want to shoot that script and turn it into your final project. So by the time we're all said and done, like, we've had several projects under our belt and different kinds of projects that we've done. So
now I wanted to go back to your series idea, because you had a series idea that I remember you sent me the script to.
Yep.
And it was I believe, wasn't it like 2 parts of the script that you sent?
Yeah, I had written 2 episodes.
Yeah. And of course I read them, and of course it was absolutely emotionally draining of a script that you wrote.
Yeah. Writing it was a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And you also made a trailer for that script as well.
They had us it was in our visual effects and motion graphics course. One of the assignments was to create like an opening title sequence for a show or a movie or something like that. So
yes,
I decided to be like, well, imagine if I was creating like the title sequence for this series, and that was my project. So
you mind if I go ahead and show that title sequence?
Go for it.
All right, let's do this. This, and this is called The Blue Envelope. Yeah,
that was created using Adobe After Effects, and that was something they told us, like, we not only want to see the rendered output, but we also want to see the project file to see how you did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was stuck using After Effects for that. I did not enjoy After Effects one bit. Just gonna throw that out there. I did not enjoy it one bit, but I did the best I could.
No, it still came out good. Not as good as you could have done it in Resolve, but
I know, right? Yeah, I actually do feel like I could have done better in Resolve. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I could have done way better.
So what you should have done, you should have just done it in Resolve, then transferred it to After Effects and used that file and sent it to them.
Oh, if only.
It was only that easy, right?
Yeah.
Now, did it make you do it between those programs too? Like, not give you a choice on what program to use?
The only time that you didn't really have a choice was for the After Effects course, because for each one of the assignments, the same thing is actually true for the audio course with Pro Tools. When you would submit your assignment, you had to submit your project file from that program so they could know that you were, like, they could see in your project file like what you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's kind of like, you know, in a high school math class, it's like, don't just give us the answer, show us your work.
now see, not a lot of kids would get that nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know, kids these days are having so
I know, right? Generation.
Yeah.
Back in my day,
Mhm.
we had to chisel our answers and not do all our work on a rock.
And if you made a mistake, you needed a whole new rock.
That's right.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I had to carry that rock home uphill both ways.
And I was grateful. Yeah.
Oh boy.
One thing that I should say about, so on my XJW Silent No More channel, I created this this video. It was a series that I had made called Thinking Caps On, and the season 2 finale of it, and actually the last Thinking Caps On that was ever made. I used DaVinci Resolve for editing it, and it was there was like an opening bit where there was like a phaser battle that I had between myself and Santa, except I played myself and Santa. But after the video was over, I announced like, okay, I'm going to film school to learn to like create like, you know, some better content and everything. And I wanted to do something more cinematic. And so all of the assignments in film school that I did, wherever possible, they all had XJW overtones and themes to them.
Mm-hmm.
So like there was like a small handful where it just wouldn't have fit. Like, of course, how do you put XJW stuff into a Breaking Bad trailer?
Right.
But it was all kind of like, you know, geared at that, like, you know, XJW, that was my theme, like to really practice and figure out like, you know, how can I, like with these assignments, how can I find my filmmaker voice for creating that kind of content? And with Blue Envelope, it was a series that I had, it was a short form web series that I had kind of conceived to run for 3 seasons at 10 episodes a piece. Each episode maybe being about 10 to 15 minutes long, to show what happens in the Jehovah's Witness community when someone steps forward and reports child sexual abuse. The blue envelope referring, if you're an XJW, or even if you're not, but referring to the special envelopes where they seal up the reports of this and then send it off to your local branch office. Like that's where the series got its name from. And when I developed the series Bible and the premise document and the pitch document, and then finally the pilot script in that course, it was my instructors. All of my instructors are people that work in the industry, and like many of them award-winning people. My instructor, who had himself made award-winning web shorts, he told me afterwards, he said, like, this is one hell of a powerful story and like a real heavy hitting one. And he said, like, you have to make this. You really, really should make this. Somebody is going to want to buy this for sure. So that's actually what spurred me to write the second episode, right? And figure out where I could go with it from there. And after I graduated from film school, after I finished the courses at the end of 2022, and I was all done, I thought back about Blue Envelope and I thought, I wonder if that could be a movie instead. You know, like I wonder if that could be a feature-length film. And of course, there was a film that was made recently by like XJW's called You Can Live Forever, which was a big hit, and I guess it's been like bootlegged so much online. But it was made here in Canada, and it was made with backing from Crave TV, which is owned by like one of the big 3 companies here in Canada for like media and whatnot. And I thought, well, if they were willing to back a film like that, I wonder if they would back a film like Blue Envelope. So what I kind of got into my head was to think like, okay, maybe instead of a web series, maybe I should make it into a movie instead, so it could get like a wider audience and really like focus the story in such a way that it could be told in 120 minutes or so, rather than over the course of about 300 minutes. So,
And with a story like that, though, it's going to be very difficult, though, to take it and compact it down.
The story, as it was developed for a 300 to 450 minute web series over the course of 3 seasons, you know, like Peter Jackson, I am not. So obviously, I'm not looking to make like the Hobbit trilogy or something like that. So one of the really cool parts about going to film school and getting to basically like rub digital shoulders with industry professionals and filmmakers is I now have their email addresses, and like some of them, like we're friends now, like not just student and instructor, like, you know, we're friends. And a couple of them, like I just talked to them, like, you know, colleague to colleague about it. And when I told one of them about kind of like the whole 3-season arc and everything and how it would go, and he says, you have a compelling story, but he says, what do you think is the heart of the story? And I kind of told him my thoughts on it. He says, I absolutely agree. So he says, you know, you have a bunch of stuff that you were going to explore in the web series. He says, you don't need that in the movie. You know, he says, like, target one specific aspect of it there, and there's your actual movie story.
Okay.
So yeah. So, and what he suggested is, like, you know, when you're thinking about your script or anything, he says, like, focus on telling that story. My story also had things like, you know, courtroom drama and whatnot. All he says, the courtroom stuff, we don't need that. He says, like, that's not the heart of your story. He says, the way that the family is treated, the way that the victim is treated, that's the meat and potatoes kind of thing. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. So like even after film school, there's still guidance and help being given. And that's, you know, usually, hopefully, what the film industry is about, is like networking with people and like collaborating on ideas, you know, giving feedback. Like even when I showed you the trailer and you're like, you know, that squiggly thing, like it looks out of place. As a filmmaker, you have to, or even as a scriptwriter, you have to be willing to have other people look at your stuff and be like, you know, this isn't needed, or that's not needed, or maybe you should think about tweaking this. Yeah, you can't have too high of an ego, or else you really won't go too far. Nobody will want to work with you.
Right.
Yeah. So
well, and I know that led up to the culmination of a project that you did that you won an award for.
Yeah. The documentary. I don't think you want to roll that documentary because it's like 13 minutes long.
No, I wasn't going to play that, but I wanted to bring it up because it was excellent. It really was. And for those of you who haven't seen it, who the hell are you and where have you been? Like, seriously.
Maybe put a link in the description afterwards.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description for this one. Because like you said, it's a 13-minute. It's a short documentary that he did. It's called Jehovah's Witnesses, The Abuse Behind the Name. And that title alone is enough to get people to want to click on it. Be like, what?
Yeah.
You know, because really that was a play on one of the Jehovah's Witnesses movies, where they had the movie they called Jehovah's Witnesses, the organization behind the name. And you took that and said the abuse behind the name.
Yeah.
It really is a great play on the words of their own title.
That title was kind of meant to be like this.
Exactly. I think you got half of it right. It's more like,
yeah. Just read between the lines, watch. Read between the lines.
Yes, exactly.
There's an interesting
just had the facts.
There's an interesting story behind that documentary too. So in my first year, in the first editing course, we had an assignment that was the assignment was called Meaningful Things. And it was the instructor wanted you to make like a 2 to 3 minute short video about something that's meaningful to you. And you had to run the idea past him first. And he had to like approve your video idea. If you didn't run it past him and you made it, no matter how good it was, if he hadn't signed off on it, you would get a 0, right? Which might sound heavy-handed, but when you think about it, no film gets really created unless somebody has signed off on it. So if you're going to be a filmmaker, get used to it, right? So I told him, I said, okay, I want to make this video about the house that I ran away from when I was 16 years old, and I want to show in the video like the escape route that I took and why that's meaningful to me. And we had a talk on video call, and he says, what you're proposing, he says, I smell a documentary here as opposed to something that you would do in like a 2 to 3 minute short video. He says in term 6 you're going to do documentary studies. He says, I also happen to be your documentary studies instructor. He said, I want you to put a pin in that idea and wait for term 6. And he said, trust me on that one. Like, you have a documentary there. And he says, I want to know more too. But he says, could you come up with something else? And I thought about it. And I was like, well, there's the house that I live in now. And he says, okay, well, what's meaningful about it? And I said, well, it's the first house that I've ever lived in that has my name on the mortgage. You know, it's my first house, like my first home kind of thing. And he says, now you're cooking. He says, do a video about that. So in my Meaningful Things video, I did this thing where my wife and I, we went up to the neighborhood that I grew up in, or the part of the city that I grown up in, and just kind of stood across the street from all of these places. And I just got a video, like quick little sort of like B-roll of all of the actual places that I've lived. What it was, like a townhouse or something like that. It was like the actual unit that I lived in, or duplex, like the duplex I lived in. And I did this voiceover where I said, like, you know, I've lived in all kinds of houses, like, you know, townhouses, duplexes, houses, apartments, a shelter, an emergency shelter for youth, group homes, you know. And then, yeah, like, I made this video, and he was like, he told me afterwards in his video feedback, he's like, you know, when you got to the part about youth emergency shelter, he says, I had a chill run down my body. He's like, I smell such a story here. He says, now I really can't wait for your documentary. So at the end of term 5, I'm in like my last week of term 5. And he says, so you're taking documentary studies next term, yeah? I said, yeah. And he says, you're not dropping out, right? Like, no, I'm going for it, right? He says, good. He says, you are going to do that documentary that we spoke about last year, right? Like, oh, you remembered? He goes, yeah, I've been waiting a year for you to make this thing. So I said, yeah, like, that's my plan for a documentary. He goes, awesome. He says, you're going to love documentary studies. He says, without trying to make any sort of conceit about it, there are a number of students that have said like that's their favorite course in all of the 2 years. Well, he was 100% correct. Like, that was my favorite course. And we studied about like different forms of documentary, participatory, cinema verite, looked at certain examples. We had to watch documentaries and comment on them. You know, some older, some newer. Like, we watched like Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, for example. Or was it Paris is Burning was another one. There was a couple that were on Netflix, like was one about like an American car maker. I can't remember what it was, but it was about like a company from China that bought a factory in America and showed kind of what happened there and so on. And then we had to make our own, you know, and we had to do like the pitch document and the outline document, like what's going to be shown, what's the subject matter and everything. And then of course we had to go and shoot it, which was very interesting because, again, going back to the very house that I ran away from when I was 16, and on the day of shooting, because we were going to point the camera at somebody's house, I had to go and knock on the door of this house and tell them like, hey, my name is Stephajn. I'm shooting a documentary or like down there. And I said, and it's about this. And I said, and I used to live in this house. And what I'm hoping to do is just get some footage of me like standing kind of like looking at the house and whatnot. I said, I'm not going to point the camera through your window or anything like that. Like wide establishing shots. Like, is this okay? And if the woman had said, no, absolutely not, well, those shots would not have been able to be in the documentary. Right. Much to my great delight, she said, yep. And I said to her, and don't worry, I will blur the house number and I will blur your license plate so that there's nothing personally identifiable. And she was like, great, but sounds good to me. And, you know, that was it. So we shot it. And then in the documentary, like there's footage of like me and Leanna walking the path that I took the day I ran away and escaped from that abusive environment. It was a very difficult day to shoot because, like, you know, imagine like walking through one of the worst and scariest days of your life. Right. Yeah, it was a trick, that was for sure. And in the first draft, like, you know, like the Kingdom Hall that you see us standing in front of in there, like that was a Kingdom Hall I attended as a kid. And the first draft was done. The first draft was in itself an assignment. We were supposed to submit it and then we would get some feedback. And my instructor said to me, he's like, you know, this is really like emotional, like powerful stuff. And he says, something you might want to do is, what was it? He said, if you could do some reenactments of things, if you can. Right. And so there was a couple of reenacting shots that we had to do, and I won't spoil what they are. Those were very, very, very tricky shots to get. I mean, in one of them I had to hold a knife, like one of those big meat knives, like what you see in Psycho. And I had not had one of those in my hand for like I'm 43 at the time that we're making the thing. 42, going on 43 at the time that I was making the thing. And I hadn't held one of those in my hand since I was 16 years old. And like when I had to go and pick it up out of the knife block, the very first time, like I had to kind of desensitize myself to it. And when I picked it up out of the knife block the first time, like even before we shot the reenactments, my hand shook so much that the knife like rattled right out of my hand and almost hit my foot on the way down.
Jeez.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it took me a few days just to be able to like be able to hold that knife in my hand, much less thinking about what I was like having to reenact. So by the time we were done shooting all of those reenacting shots and everything, like you see in the video, like my hand is quite steady, but my nerves in shooting that footage were definitely not. And at the end of that shooting night, I remember sitting down on the edge of the bed, and I felt so tired and drained, and I just bawled my eyes out. And my wife, who operated the camera for me that night, just put her arm around me, and she's like, "You did it. Like, you know, it's over. It's done. Like, you got the shots that you needed." And I'm between tears, like, "Yes." You know, she's like, "Okay, you know, now it's time to, you know, next steps, editing." You're like,
and
you know, work it in.
Were you able to do those shots in one take, or did you have to do multiple takes on those?
Multiple takes. Yeah. Multiple.
So, yeah. So that adds more to it right there when you got to keep doing it over and over.
Yeah.
How many takes would you say for especially for that knife shot?
Oh, the knife shot. One of the shots, I think we had to do like 8 takes because it was the very first thing that we shot. We were trying to figure out just the right angle and just the right lighting for it. And also figuring out the focus. And we shot it using this camera, which does not have autofocus. It's all manual. So my wife, bless her heart, like she's stuck learning how, like on the spot, to operate this beast of a camera.
Jeez.
To get those shots. right? And also having to like adjust the focus manually and everything else. Like, yeah, our first few shots, our first few takes, like they were either out of focus, the camera was like jittery or something like that, or the lighting wasn't quite right, or even like there was one shot, there was one take that we did where you could actually see the reflection of like the light on a door handle. I was like, oh, well, that's not going to work. We got to readjust our position. And it was like shooting in a very tight space too. So yeah, it was incredibly difficult to shoot, both like technically, but also emotionally. And like even editing the first draft and then editing the final draft and whatnot, as an editor, you know, like you watch this thing that you're creating over and over and over and over and over again. Even like certain pieces of it, like, oh, you know, I need to drop a couple of frames there. Oh, wait, no, I should probably crop in a little bit here. Or, you know, oh, I need to adjust the color on that one. Or, you know, okay, I've got the cut that I need, but now I need to layer music under it. So like, yeah, like over and over and over again, all of these things. And the trigger warning that I placed at the beginning of the documentary is not, it's not like performative or anything, or meant to be kind of like a clickbaity kind of thing, right? Creating the thing, when I would be like editing late into the night, like all alone in my editing suite here, yeah, like there were many times where like I would be in tears after a night of like editing it and refining it and whatnot. And yeah, like it was definitely like a challenging, very emotionally and draining assignment to do. And I didn't even create it with the idea of winning any awards or anything. It was an assignment for film school, for crying.
Right.
So
now, did you know that they were going to do like awards for these at all?
No.
Beforehand, or was that just like they sprung that on you?
No. So what they like, okay, so when I got the feedback from my final draft on that thing, that was my final assignment, documentary studies. On the video, my instructor, when he started talking, you could tell that he had actually been crying himself when he watched it. And because he had a lump in his throat, and you could actually kind of see like coming down his eyes, like some tears, so to speak. And as he gave the feedback on it, couple of like minor things that needed some fixing in that. But then he said to me, he's like, this film, he says, like, this should be in festivals. Like you should be submitting this to film festivals. And then he said, in fact, our school has a festival of films. He says, you should submit this to our school's film festival that happens like next year. He's like, trust me, you've got to submit this. And I did, obviously, right? And it got selected to actually be screened. Like just because you submit it to a festival doesn't mean they're actually going to show it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it got selected, and then, much to my great surprise, it was unanimously voted on by the panel of judges. The vote was unanimous for it to win the Best Canadian Short Film category of that festival.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that the vote was unanimous on that one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like that was like even a majority vote, you know, for like, you know, that's an honor in itself, right? But for the vote to be like unanimous, it's like, yeah, this is the one. I was like, holy moly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So, only question for you now is, where do you go from here?
Well, so there's a couple of things that have happened since then. Like well, hang on, let me show you something. For anybody curious, here's the award that was given to me for it, right?
Sweet.
So, yeah. possibly handy as a weapon too, it looks like. But
or a butt plug.
Or yeah. Mind. Ooh. But so at the in preparation for accepting the award, I thought, like, well, this documentary, like, between the two interviews, like myself and Leanna, the documentary, like, we were supposed to have it be only 10 minutes. And in my instance, like, they waived that 10-minute limit. They said, like, you know, to snip it down to 10 minutes would take out just too much, right? Like, it just, you know, don't worry about keeping it at 10 minutes. Just try and keep it, like, you know, don't get it to 20 minutes, like 15 minutes or less, please. But I thought about, like, some of the stuff that had to be left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. And I thought, like, there could be a feature-length documentary here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even just between my story and Leanna's, like, there were parts that were cut out that I'm like, could you imagine if that could have made it into the documentary? But there was just no room for it. And so what I really want to do, and much to my great delight, my my instructor, mentor, now friend, I told him how I wanted to create a feature-length version of that documentary and explore other kinds of abuses that happen within Watchtower, like domestic abuse, child sexual abuse, human rights abuses, shunning, health abuses, like, you know, the no blood stuff that just creates needless martyrs, like things of that nature. I wanted to create a documentary that I could explore all of those, and just, for lack of a better way of describing it, really throw Watchtower under the bus.
Oh yeah.
And much to my delight, he was like, yeah, like, definitely. He says, like, you know, you should develop that. He says, like, send me a treatment document, like, once you have in mind, like, what your documentary's arc is going to be, kind of thing. So even now, what I've started doing is I put out a call for anybody who wants to step forward and tell their story. And what I've been doing is kind of going through some of the people that have stepped forward to just kind of, like, hear their story, to piece together what the through line of the whole thing could be, and how I would be able to link all of these things together to form something that's coherent. And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so, like, when you were talking earlier about your whole 3 parts of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how would you end all this? Because, like, you know, for stuff like this, you know, obviously we're still deep in the middle of it. You know, yes, people have left and, you know, have gotten help and been able to break free from the organization, but still the organization is there, still causing those abuses. So how would your story for that go beyond that? Like, would there be some kind of, like, proposal for a resolution, or just saying, even if you're still in, there's hope, you know, to get help? Like, what's the end game of this whole?
I think the end game is to, like, because, like, documentaries usually shine a light on something that people were not previously aware of. I mean, not all documentaries are activist pieces, if you will.
Right.
A really good example for might be it was called My Octopus Teacher, right? Mm-hmm. This is just a story about a guy who went diving underwater and discovered this octopus, and then formed a relationship with the octopus over the course of, I think it was like a year or so, or like a certain amount of months, right? And what his relationship with this octopus kind of showed him about himself and whatnot. And in the 3rd act of his documentary, spoiler alert, showed how it even helped him to find a relationship with his son that he was kind of distant from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all this from a documentary that's beautifully shot, by the way, about an octopus, right? I think it even won an award, like at the Oscars for like best documentary or something. I think in the 2021 Oscars or something like that. So
best octomentary.
Best octomentary, yeah. So for me, like in the end, the documentary, like Act 3, it all just kind of depends upon how people's stories have worked out. I mean, in Act 3 of my short documentary, basically it was like, look, what have Leanna and I learned since then? You know, like since we both escaped from that cult, like what have we learned about family and friends and so on, and how have we moved on in our lives to like kind of fill a gap that was left by what our families, like biological families, did to us and what Watchtower did to us. That was the resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
For something like this, it could just as easily be like, yeah, like how have people moved on since then? Does everybody survive, right? Well, I mean, sadly, we know that that's not always the case. Like some people die by suicide because of what Watchtower has done to them. Some people are really in like a very rough emotional state. Some people are, you know, earlier on in their healing than others are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and for that matter, like what's happening to Watchtower? Well, you know, like look what's happened to them in Norway, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are some things that can be explored in Act 3 of a documentary. Like Watchtower's numbers are dwindling, you know, like that's a resolution in a way. Like, yeah, their numbers are dwindling. People are waking up. The like governments are waking up and realizing what kind of like destructive cult is operating right under their noses. Like, look at what Australia learned about them. Look what the UK learned about them through the IICSA. Look what Norway learned about them and then took away their registration status as an official, like actual religion.
Yeah.
Like state recognized religion. So like those are things that are like really good to show, like, well, you know, this is what's happening as more people like come forward and speak up and be like, hey, this is what they're doing. Governments, you need to do something about it. And the goal of the documentary would also be to say, like, look, this is what's happening. Number one, for survivors, you're not alone, right? Number two, you know, there needs to be something done about it. Like you think about any Michael Moore documentary, like Bowling for Columbine or Sicko, Fahrenheit 451, I think it was called, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these documentaries, like, you know, he shows about like something that's wrong with America, right? But then like he kind of shows like, you know, there are things that could be done to improve upon this. And, you know, he creates a conversation, even if it's just for a short amount of time around the issue. You know, it's not that his documentaries solve the problem,
right,
or show the problem being resolved. I mean, you know, healthcare is still what it is, and it has always been in America, even after Sicko was made. The one, what was it called? Where Should We Invade Next? Where he looked at different things like the school food program and so on. Like, it's not like it changed, but at least it raised some awareness and discussion around it. So that's hopefully what my documentary would do. It's people don't make big bucks making documentaries. That's one question that I've been asked a lot. Like, are you profiting from this? Like, no, I'm not. All of the money for going to film school, like for all of the equipment that I purchased and everything, it's all been out of my own pocket. Like I'm not in debt, but I certainly am nowhere near like even breaking even for the money that's been invested. It's, you know, it's a labor of love. And as a documentarian, you have to, like, it has to be a labor of love, because you're not going to make a ton of money unless you're, say, someone like Michael Moore who can crank one out a year, as it were. So,
right.
Yeah.
And those are all considerations, because you still have to work a regular job while doing all this. So that also takes more time to get any of this out onto the screen in front of people as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
and more people too. I mean, it's like this documentary took 3 people to make, like myself, Leanna, and my wife operating the camera when I couldn't operate the camera, right?
Mhm.
But for the scope of what the feature length version would be, like there's travel costs involved, and like interviews are not going to be done using StreamYard or Zoom or anything. Like they're going to be like in person. So
yeah,
there's traveling and accommodations and licensing for, like, say, music, or and then of course, like getting distribution and getting it shown in theaters. Like none of these things are automatic. And even getting it shown at film festivals, like when you want to submit a film to a film festival, there's an actual fee that you have to pay to submit it, right? Not saying that it's always huge. Like some of them it's like $10. For my school's film festival, like it was free as long as you were like a former student. You were submitting it like one of your assignments, right? But yeah, so like things like that, like all of those things are expenses.
right.
Yeah.
Well, just remember, whenever you come my way, you have a place to stay. So I'll try to cut down your expenses a little bit there as much as I can.
Yeah, if you could give me a 10% discount on the accommodations, that'd be great.
Oh, so you want me to pay you to stay here for free? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, a 10% discount of 0 hopefully is still 0. So, but
it's true. But
yeah,
you want me to discount nothing. So I guess
I mean, in addition to making the feature length documentary, I mean, like I don't want everything that I make post film school to be all XJW themed. I mean, like it's there's no such thing as a happy XJW story. There's no such thing as like, yeah, like it's not a light topic. Hi, puppies.
There's the invasion of the dogs.
Yeah. It's not a happy topic, and it's not a light topic. And like even the stories that I've learned or heard so far, like, yeah, there's some very heavy emotional stuff there. I mean, you think about what like Erwin Zalkin has seen with those files that he can't talk about.
Yeah.
Right. For some of the people that have shared their stories with me so far, like, yeah, like these people, wherever possible, like if I've been able to talk to them in person, like I give them the biggest hug afterwards. And like I have to decompress afterwards just hearing their stories. I can only imagine how they feel. But yeah, so like all of that to say that like there are other things that I do want to make. Like I do want to make Blue Envelope as a feature film. But then it would be fun to also do some comedy stuff. Like I had an idea for a short form comedy series, for example, that could be kind of like it would feel a bit like The Office, like the comedy series The Office, but it is set in the headquarters of a fictional cult, so that not just XJWs, but like ex-Scientologists or any other former cult members would be able to look at it and identify with it and laugh at it. Some of them would be maybe a little bit more inside jokes about XJWs, such as, pillows, certain brand of whiskey,
or
things like that.
Or for Mormons, underwear.
Yeah, certain kinds of underwear, and just being able to kind of like, make some comedy stuff about that. And even like non-cult, non-ex-culty kind of comedy or science fiction. Like you saw some of the assignments that I wrote in school for like when we were studying script writing. Some of those short form scripts, like those scenes would be fun to just shoot as like just something to shoot and make and build a portfolio out of. And is there a career in filmmaking ahead for me? Well, maybe. As I said to one guy when I was at the film festival after I'd won the award, he was interviewing me and he took my picture, and I said to him, like, I hope that this isn't just a one-time thing. Like I want to do more than this. And he says, I have a strong feeling that you will. And like, especially since it's been like, it's in my veins, as it were, since high school.
Right.
And on my skin, for crying out loud.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Like film school has really it's opened my eyes to how films are made, and in some ways has kind of ruined TV and film watching, because now I'm always watching it with the eye of a filmmaker. And my poor wife, while I was in film school, like just about every movie we would watch, I would pause a film, like, there's plot point number 1, oh, there's plot point number 2. Thus, Act 2 has come to an end. She's like, would you just play the damn movie already?
That sounds like me. Like if I go to an amusement park, I understand how things are built.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as a welder, and I look at welds and I'm like, especially, you're going to get on a ride that you strap yourself into. You're going to go high. You're going to go through loops and, all these things. You want the thing to be strong and sturdy and keep your ass safe to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes I look at welds, I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's a little sketchy looking at that. I don't know if I want to get on this ride or not.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of lose that illusion of what that could be for somebody else who doesn't see that.
Yeah.
Crystal will tell you. I do that all the time.
Yep.
No.
I mean, the same thing happened when I was studying programming 20 some odd years ago, when that career got started. I was learning programming. I would look at everyday things like traffic lights and be like, so if I was programming the traffic lights, what would that look like? What would the code look like? How would I do that in Visual Basic, which is the language I was learning at the time? So there's also one other thing that I created in school with the reality television course. When I was in that course, this was in term 7 of 8. So my second last term of school. We'd just gotten started, and then we received a phone call on my birthday last year. Congratulations, you and your wife have been selected by a birth parent to adopt their daughter. And I mean, the last 4 or 5 months of film school were quite interesting. I asked my wife, like, should I pause school and while we adjust to having a newborn baby? And she's like, no, keep going. We had to create and invent an original reality television series, kind of like the web series thing, do a pitch document, do a series Bible, what would the episodes look like, and so on. And I invented a show that I called Instant Families. And it was inspired by what had just happened with my wife and I and our daughter. My wife and I were a family before, but man, we became like an instant family, because one day, you're just thinking okay, now where am I going to have birthday dinner tonight with my wife and in-laws? And then you receive a phone call out of the blue. It's like, okay, congratulations, you've been selected to be parents. Are you in or are you out? And then 10 minutes later, it's like, okay, so I guess we're parents now. Drive down to a city 3 hours away tomorrow and come meet your daughter. That's literally how it came. So I conceived this show called Instant Families, which was basically about adoption and kind of debunking myths. You helped out with that by providing some footage for the sizzle reel. The instructor in that course for reality television, he said, I have never seen a show like this anywhere on TV. You should seriously think about selling it. Get it made.
See, it just goes to show how life or art imitates life, because you're taking your life and you're making art out of it. And that's really where you get the best concepts from. And it's really been proven in the stuff you've been doing.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here with that. Are you still going to continue to do any YouTube activism or anything in the future, or are you going to be concentrating more on your documentaries?
I still want to do activism on YouTube, and there's even been some thoughts about bringing back thinking caps on in a different way. All of the episodes that I had made before, they were just right? But I've thought about bringing it back in a way that might be a little bit more cinematic, still comedic. And a couple of my fellow students in film school that live nearby when I talked with them about it, they said, like, count us in, like that would be fun to make. So, we'll see. Thinking Caps On was never a widely watched show. Like, I think maybe 100 and some views per episode at best. Most of them didn't even make it to 100. But in the end, like, as a filmmaker, you have to decide, like, are you making something for others, or are you doing it for yourself? And Thinking Caps On was me kind of exploring different video editing, different storytelling things. And I enjoyed making them. Like, sometimes I go back and I look at some of them and I still laugh. Like, wow, that was fun to do. So yeah, like I still want to do it. I still want to put like meaningful and useful content out there that can hopefully help make people laugh, right? That have escaped from Watchtower's clutches. But then also like raise awareness, as always, and even like provide updates on how some of the projects are going. Like, I know my Exjw channel has really gone dark for the past year or so since I finished, but it's still something near and dear to my heart, and I still want to make more. Just, it's all about finding that time and balance to do it. So,
and to all my viewers, if you want something to laugh at, just go watch Exjw Silent No More YouTube, and you can laugh your ass off all day at Stephajn. No,
yeah, laughing at Stephajn. Yeah, I like
in fact, we should make a YouTube channel all about laughing at Stephajn. No,
yeah, that'll be the channel name, Laughing at Stephajn.
Laughing at Stephajn time. It'll be the last show you ever watch.
And we'll have like a 10-hour video of you bragging about going to the Star Trek experience, and me just
that's just
a 10-hour loop of just that. Yeah,
man, I tell you what, going back to that real quick, I remember when you asked me to help you and shoot that little clip for it when I was in my car in that one, and that night I was in my work parking lot when I shot that, and I was at work that night, and I was thinking about that, and I'm like, you know what? The idea just came to me. I'm like, I got something I can roast him with on this. And I think it's going to be hilarious. And I remember messaging you. I'm like, hey, when's your project due? And you're like, at the end of the week or something like that. I'm like, okay, great. I said, I'm going to send you something in the morning for your project. And I wasn't even sure if you were going to use it or not. And when you did and ended it with that, I was over the moon about that, because I just thought it was so hilarious just to have fun with you, especially on that video.
You want to know something about that? Okay, so when you sent me that footage, I was like, okay, no, this is just too good not to use, right? Like, I've got to work this in here.
Right.
My instructor, in the feedback on that, he's like, I really like what you did here. He says this rivalry that you set up in your video between you and your friend, is like, and you left it at that. He says, like, it's like a great little cliffhanger kind of thing. He says, like, it's for storytelling purposes. He says, you just created a story right there of this rivalry between you and your friends. So, yeah, he liked it too.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that instructor like some kind of producer or somebody in the Star Trek realm somewhere too?
Yeah, he I would say, so his name is Kishole Ray, and you can look him up on IMDb. He has a very impressive list of credits to his name. He's done work on like a bunch of the Marvel films. He did work on like the newer Star Trek movies, like Star Trek Into Darkness and whatnot. Yeah, you'll see on his name, like a bunch of those movies are on there. I asked him at one point, I said, is there something that you've done that I could look at and be like, Kishole made that? And he says, well, you've seen Endgame, like Avengers Endgame, right? I'm like, yeah. He says, you know that scene when Captain America says, Avengers assemble, and they all go charging and all of the rest of that kind of stuff? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I was one of the compositors on that. I'm like, so these are the kinds of instructors that you get to have as a Toronto Film School student. Well,
we'll see. In a way, I feel honored though, because like, I came up with that concept of roasting you in that video, and somebody like that in the industry got to see me doing that to you and critique it. So that's like my little claim to fame.
That's a lame claim to fame, but you know, you got to take what you can get, right?
Hey, I'm no film student. I'm never going to meet any of these people for real. So, you know, I mean, that's all I can get. I'm going to get in life. I'll take it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yep.
You get to talk with these people and you're buddy with them, you know. So, I mean, you still got it better. Okay.
You know, in the end, like the education was phenomenal. Like some of it, like, yeah, you know, I knew that from back in high school. But like really it was so cool to get like a continuing, like a further education in it. But the connections that have been made, even at the graduation ceremony just last week in Toronto, even there, like getting to rub shoulders with others that are in the industry and like other like fellow graduates and everything, even some people that recognized me from the film that was shown back in May were coming up to me and like, you know, hey, I remember your film, like that was amazing, like what do you have planned next? Here's my number, you know, if you need help with it or if you need help with anything, call me, kind of thing. One person that I met there, he said, there's this film festival that I have like some vouchers to submit films to. He says, I'm going to give you a voucher. You should submit your documentary to that festival. So, you know, like
good.
Opportunities like that have just been like amazing. And I know that there are people like in the Exjw community that themselves are filmmakers. And, you know, I hope that I can get to work with them, even if it's not on something Exjw related, just, you know, working with other filmmakers. It's a treat. It's really cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience about that. And you know, just some of the inside stuff about it was just really interesting, and you know, how the process of it all goes. So appreciate you sharing all that.
Oh, thank you so much.
And for our viewers who have been with us for this time, appreciate you coming. Go check out Stephajn's video. His main YouTube channel is Exjw Silent No More, and you can catch that documentary there. I will put a link for it in the description below. And with that, have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.